Bing.
Perfect.
This is Jamie Mantos, who is my assistant, and she will be going over housekeeping right now. We're going to keep this to an hour because Tim actually has recording sessions right at the Heart Out, but Carin will stay on. So Jamie, why don't you go on with the housekeeping?
All right, perfect. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're really excited to have Karin and Tim here to talk about AI protections and everything that they're doing through the NAVA organization. So, just a couple quick housekeeping things. While they're talking during this first part, we're going to ask everybody to turn their cameras off and make sure that you're muted. And then, if you have any questions or anything that comes up, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be off camera moderating the chat and taking note of all of that. So at the end, we're going to open it up for a Q&A portion. So when that happens, I'll address the questions we have that came up. And then if people have additional questions that come up, we'll invite you to turn your camera on. And that way you can come on and ask people directly what your question is. But feel free in the meantime to comment, be active with each other in the chat, be interactive. We want you guys to feel a part of it. And yeah, that should be everything. So we're really excited. Thanks for tuning in.
So you're going to put us together on screen, right?
Yep, everyone else, go ahead and turn your cameras off. I'm gonna turn mine off as well. All right, it should just be the three of you now. So
Well, no, we have to pin us.
I have you pinned.
Oh, I don't see. Maybe
There,
I'm
there
wrong.
should be, if you look in the upper corner, upper right-hand corner, it says view, and you
Yeah,
can click on
hide
Oh,
speaker
yeah,
view.
I do know that.
Then you'll see
Yeah,
us or multi-speaker.
Or
got
you
it.
can spotlight the three of them too.
Well, I see
Yeah.
Lori on camera.
Yeah.
Let me let me uh pin everyone. Add pin. There we go. And me. Um, there we go. I have to pin everyone. Hi, everyone. Here we go. So with
Hello.
me today, with us, I have Tim Friedlander and Carin Gilfry. And Tim is the founder and president of NAVA, and Carin is the also a founder and vice president. Now, NAVA is a social impact nonprofit association created to advocate and promote the advancement of voice acting industry through action, education, inclusion, and benefits. They have been going to Washington, D.C. and advocating, meeting with legislators and advocating for AI. They know what's going on. If you are not voiceover artists, stay on. This is not only for voiceover artists, it is for all actors. So they're very busy voiceover artists themselves, and we're thrilled that they gave us their time. So I'm going to turn it right over to them, and because everyone wants to know when I'm on panels or guests, they ask me, I said, I don't know, but I know who does know. So Tim and Karen, take it away.
Hello, everyone. We are
Hello.
very happy to be here today. Thank you, Terry, for inviting us. Yeah, like Terry said, this is not just a discussion for voice actors.
Yeah.
This is for all actors, and in fact, not just actors, all people in the United States. We'll talk about U.S. legislation, but also all people worldwide. We can talk a little bit about the work that we're doing overseas as well, and how it works when you're working with international production companies and clients and things like that. So, uh, Tim? What
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah. Oh, what do I think? That's a loaded question. Um, what I think, is let's kind of lay some of the groundwork on how this has kind of happened over the last couple of years. We can start there with a little bit. Um, One of the things that is interesting about VO in similar to other artist areas, but quite different, is that we are very much of a global industry, and have been for quite a while. If you're on camera and you live in the United States, you're probably going to work in the United States predominantly. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to get, go overseas somewhere out of the country. But VO has been working across borders for a decade, if longer, 10, 15 years, since really the rise of the internet started to kind of make home studios. So our concerns are global because we're going to be impacted by the various people we work with in the countries they live in, the laws that they work under in their country, and the laws that apply to us under the contracts that we signed. So we started with NAVA, really started on a global level, started working on the EU AI Act in early 2023 with a group called United Voice Artists. Then we moved into federal legislation here in the US with the No Fakes Act and a few other bills that have come and gone since then. And then only recently this year have we really dug into state level work, where we're working in California specifically. And we're starting to see, now so many different state level changes that are happening, different state level legislation, and the implementation of the EU AI Act, which currently is in discussion around how to implement it. So they got it in place, and now there's this massive discussion about how to actually put it in place, implement it, use it, enforce it. And that's an entirely different discussion that's going to take a long time to figure out, as it is anyway. But Karin, let's talk a little bit about kind of, what it is that we're talking about in some of our concerns
Yes.
versus training, cloning, machine learning,
Yeah.
TTS, like the
Oh,
things that we would see as a voice actor.
let's even go beyond that and talk about
Yeah.
what the problem is in general. One of the main problems with AI technology and the ability to clone a person is that we, as actors, as people, do not actually have a federal right of publicity, meaning we actually do not own our voice, image, name, and likeness on a federal level. So there are different state right of publicity laws. California has some pretty good protections for right of publicity that were determined by the courts. Bette Midler kind of was a person in the 80s who made it so that people can't just use you in a commercial or use your voice in a commercial without your permission. Tennessee recently enacted the Elvis Act, which gives people in the state of Tennessee rights to their voice, image, name, and likeness. But on a federal level, we don't have that right. So that is something that we are fighting for. The tricky thing with AI is that it used to be, if someone wanted to use you for a commercial or use you on a TV show or use you in a movie, et cetera, you had to physically go to a place, record something or film something. It was on tape. That was the only tape of it. And then it could be put into the movie. And if that tape got used not just in that movie, but in another movie, then that was a violation, right? Now, you don't actually have to be in a physical place for them to take your biometric data, for them to take your voice print. After the Super Bowl Kanye ad, where Kanye put up a swastika T-shirt as an ad for his company, and then there was a video that came out that was a bunch of actors, well-known actors, with wearing shirts that were pro, I mean, he's anti-Semitic, they're not, right? So they were fighting against anti-Semitism in this video. None of those actors were actually there. The video was produced by a company that took their image, and not their voices in that case, it was just video of them, and put them in this big compilation video. And it was like, I don't know how many actors, Tim, like a dozen, maybe more.
It was a large amount
Well-known
of it. Yeah.
people.
Yep.
And that was on the internet, and people thought it was real. And while the cause was a good one that time, fighting anti-Semitism, that's fine. But who knows what the cause would be the next time, you know? And when anyone has the ability legally in the United States to take someone's image or likeness and use it for whatever they want, for their own commercial gain, for their own political views or whatever, that is a big, big problem. For us as voice actors, it's a big problem because we are literally sending clean, beautiful audio files, hundreds of hours a month, some of us, out into the world to different studios, to different casting directors, to different production companies without any protections. About 80% of the voiceover world is non-union. So many of these jobs are done without any union AI protections. Only some of the union contracts have negotiated AI clauses in them. And so there is just a ton of work that is being exchanged between people who are, hiring voice actors as independent contractors, one-time fee, buyout for the file, and they are saying, I own the rights to this file. I can do with it what I want. That includes your biometric data. That includes your voice print. And there is currently no law that says that they can't federally. So that is something that we are really, really, really trying to fight for, so that we can all be protected on a federal level. So that's the ground.
Yep. Yep.
That's the problem.
And then within that problem are various other problems. One of the things that we've had to try and navigate is understanding the technology and making sure that we as voice actors understand what these jobs mean when the auditions come through. So for years, we've seen either TTS or machine learning or training or other things in the jobs that said for internal use, private, not to be used publicly. And many people have done those jobs over the years without any kind of protections to really ensure that those jobs wouldn't go public or that they couldn't be used for training. And now some people 5-10 years later are finding out that jobs that they had done 10 years ago are now being used as either recognizable voices for a platform or are being used to train systems. And you have two kind of concerns. One is my voice will be recognizable. And so I will be in conflict that maybe my voice will say something that I wouldn't say. It will be recognizable as Carin's voice or my voice or anybody here, where somebody will say, hey, I heard you in that commercial the other day, or I heard you for this spot. And you say, well, I never did that spot. That's a recognizability factor, which causes conflict for us potentially in the commercial realm. If we are the voice of one product and a competing product uses our AI voice, there's potentially conflict in there. The other concern is when our voice is just used to create fully synthetic or blended or merged voices that don't sound like us, that don't sound like anybody in particular, but now become additional competition on the marketplace. So you potentially have a job that could be done by a synthetic voice that isn't attributable to any person, and only an AI company owns that voice. That AI company will make the money from the residuals or the usage of that voice, and no human then will be compensated in there. So we're looking at job loss in that sense, and then we're looking at possibly market competition in the other sense if it's a recognizable voice.
I want to talk a little bit too about training versus cloning, because I think that people tend to get this confused. And they assume that anytime they work with an AI company or anytime their voice is used for AI, it means that someone wants to make a one-to-one clone of them. And that is really not the case. In fact, SAG-AFTRA recently signed a contract with a company called Ethovox. And Ethovox is doing their best to create 100% ethically sourced voice models. But they are not necessarily, although they will eventually, but they are not necessarily at this point creating one-to-one clones of the people that sign on with their company. And the way that it works is this. Any generative AI model needs a foundation upon which to do the thing that it was designed to do. So if it is an AI image generator, right? And you want, the end product is, I want to be able to say, like, do, this picture in the style of Monet or something. The model needs thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of examples of paintings, of visual art, of all kinds of artwork in order to be able to figure out this is how you represent an apple. This is how you represent the sky. This is how you represent a person. This is how many fingers a person has, et cetera, et cetera. They need just a ton of data in order to do that. In voiceover and in video models, video clones of people, they need thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of sound files. So this all goes into the system and it trains the system to learn this is what it sounds like when someone is emphatic. This is what English sounds like. This is what the letter S sounds like. This is what all of these different things. So in the end, you have what is essentially like, I call it like a gray guy, which is just like a basic model of a human that does not look or sound like anyone, but is just made up of all of these thousands of hours of content. Then, if you want that gray guy to sound like Tim Friedlander, I would take a small sample of Tim Friedlander's voice. A system would determine what Tim's voice print is, all of the characteristics that make Tim sound like Tim, and we can overlay Tim's voice on top of that human-sounding model, like a skin in a video game. And then I can type in anything I want. The thing sounds human. It has the voice characteristics of Tim, and that is a voice clone of Tim. So it's not that you have like thousands of hours of Tim and that goes into creating a model of just Tim and then it comes out with just Tim. The model is based on thousands and thousands of hours of every single person that they can get their hands on. And that's why at this point, it only takes 3 seconds of source material to create a believable digital clone of a person. Because they don't need thousands of hours of a person's voice. They just need to isolate the voice print of that person from a very short sample, overlay it like a skin on top of the model that they have, and then we can make Tim say anything. And you can do this now legally on a site like 11 Labs for a subscription price of $5 a month. And all I have to do to say that Tim, or to make Tim's voice, is to say that Tim gave me permission to clone his voice, and I check a little checkbox, and that's it. You can do this with any person that you have source audio for. You can do this with children. You can do this with people who are deceased. You can do this like to anyone. And it is frightening. It is frightening not just for us as actors, because that's how we make our living. It is frightening for every single person in the world, because you do not want someone to clone your voice, call your bank, have your cloned voice say, "My voice is my password, please verify me," and get into your bank account, which I did with my own bank account. This is something that is scary and should absolutely be illegal, but the technology has not caught up. Sorry, the legislation has not caught up to the technology.
So speaking of legislation, I know that you've been going to Washington. Now that we know the real scary problems, where are you at with this?
Yeah. Tim, you want to talk about the No Fakes Act?
Yeah, that is a good question. So we've been out specifically in support of the No Fakes Act, which would make voice, image, name, and likeness an intellectual property right. It's a bill that has been in the works for multiple years, 5 or 6 years. In some capacity, it was introduced for the first time last year, early middle part of the year, and we were in DC meeting with all of the individual members about support of that bill. It did not go through last year and was taken off the table with the change of the administration, but was reintroduced about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. Was in a more robust form with clearer language, with stronger protections, with other things in there that would be better for everybody who's covered by that. That is currently in debate right now, or is currently being discussed among the members. in Congress. And so we're going to be out there in June, end of June, for a week to meet one-on-one with members of the Judiciary Committee, and various other members who are involved in making the decision about this being voted on. We are seeing it as a very bipartisan supported bill. There is very little opposition to it, except for some very specific, free speech or advocates who believe that the internet should be free and everything on the internet should be freely available to anybody for anything at any given time. But most of the people involved, including big tech companies like Google and Microsoft, have come on board in support of the bill. And were there. Google was there at the press conference when they made the announcement of reintroducing it a few weeks ago. So that's great. On the state level, there are various state laws that have gone into effect. Some in California and New York that went into effect last year. Elvis Act, as we talked about, in Tennessee, and so it's knowing, not only where you live, where you work out of, but also this contract that you're going to sign. If you read the terms, what jurisdiction is that contract going to be under? So sometimes you may live in California, but you're going to sign a contract that is for an overseas company. Your jurisdiction is going to be in the UK. So if you have to enforce that or do anything with the contract or take somebody to court, it's going to have to be under the jurisdiction of a foreign country. And so that runs into various different labor laws and different protections and jurisdictions in there. So, that's why for our approach and our thought through this is then having a unified federal law in the U.S. Would at least help us navigate this more clearly. And then having something that is somewhat unified globally. And we are never going to get anything that is fully unified globally. Every country is going to want to put different protections and different laws and different things into place. And every tech company is going to want to have freedom in every country to do what they want. So, we're trying to find some kind of unified front in there, but at least on the federal level, we can get that in place. In California, there were 4 AI bills that went into place last year. One of those most specifically that we were in support of was AB 2602, which requires that any voice that is cloned or any digital double replica of your voice that is created must be done with reasonably informed specific description of usage. So meaning they have to tell you very specifically how they're going to use it. And so you as an actor can say, well, I don't agree to this usage, or I do agree to this usage, and they have to tell you that beforehand. So it actually requires one of 3 things to happen. You either have to be represented by a lawyer. So if you're represented by a lawyer and you go through this contract, then they can make a clone of you based on that contract. If it was negotiated or run under a union contract, so if it's under a SAG-AFTRA contract, whatever terms of that contract were in play would apply to that agreement. Or if those previous 2 things don't happen, you as a voice actor have the ability or the right to get a reasonably specific description of intended usage of that piece of audio or that cloned voice they're going to use. So they can't just say, we want to use it for anything and we'll tell you later. They have to give you some specific indication of how they're going to use it. Doesn't mean that it can't change down the line. They can come back to you and say, we decided we want to do something more with this, or the terms may change. That happens frequently. You get, they'll do an ad buy and they come back and they want to re-up this, or they want to go to a larger market, or they want to put it on different platforms. So that's all negotiable down the line, but they have to tell you upfront a reasonably specific description of intended uses.
And I just want to reiterate, since we have non-voice actors in the room as well, that this is not just for voice cloning; it is for all digital replicas. So this is for on-screen and voice. So yes, or even hologram, any digital replica of you.
A digital replica, yeah. And they do have defined digital replica, but they have not defined what reasonably specific means. So that's up to us to kind of make sure that we know specifically what we want to see in an agreement.
That would be, go ahead, Terry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that would be something like if they say, we are creating a digital replica of you to be just used as our customer service chat bot, but we're going to have your face on screen. But then they don't use it just for that. They use it for TV commercials for their company. That was not included in the reasonably specific description of intended use. And so they have violated the contract if it goes beyond what was described within the contract.
Mhm.
This might be very naive, but before all this really becomes a protective law, is it possible when actors get a contract, whether it be union or non-union, to write in something about AI? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, do they have to be afraid to do this? And if the if it is possible, do you have suggestion of any kind of wording? It's a loaded question.
Why, yes, we do. So first question, is it good to write it in the contract? Yes, absolutely. And I want to assure you that even if there are, for some reason, no AI protections in a union contract that you have, or AI protections that you don't believe are strong enough, you can add anything to your union contract as long as both parties agree that is part of the contract. So absolutely put AI clauses in every single contract for every single job that you do.
Do you think actors have to be afraid that, oh, the producer will see, the ad agency or the production company, I wrote something in that I'm causing
Oh,
trouble? It's a typical actor
I mean, so the
concern.
other thing is that the NAVA has this AI synthetic voice contract writer, which can be added to any contract, including union contracts. The most important thing right now is to have the conversation,
Yeah.
because a lot of these companies don't even realize what a concern AI is for us. And sometimes you have the conversation and they say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even consider that. Oh, oh gosh, we should be including this in all our contracts." Oh, okay, great, great. Or they say to you, "No, we cannot sign that because we do want to use your voice for AI." And then you know that they want to use your voice for AI, and then you can be more informed and negotiate
Yeah.
that part of the contract.
Not only the
Sometimes
voice, though, the image,
an
right?
image as
Talking
well.
about
Yeah,
image too. I wonder
yeah.
if casting directors like Lori's on here. Like I wonder if we should, when our non-union clients come to us, and gives us all the terms of agreement, I wonder as a casting director if, because we do have conversations with them, if
Yeah,
we
Yeah.
can say, well, how about adding blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
we would like to see that, like we encourage everybody to put that in some capacity. We've dealt, we've met with agents, we've met with some casting directors, and it's one of those things, that can just be added. Oh, by the way, we've added our AI contract writer or our AI writer into this. And it gives you a couple things. As Karin said, if they put that in place, now you've got some legal protections in there. But if they say, oh, no, we can't put this in place, then you can say, okay, then I don't feel comfortable working with your company, because, or can you give us some assurances in your language, in your contract, that you won't use our voice for AI or training, in there. And that's something that I think, that I think in all parts of this, of the chain, all the way from production, all the way up to the talent, can ask, I think at this point, is reasonable and have permission to ask about AI protections in any project that you do. And I think everybody should ask about just some kind of AI protections. It's as simple as great, looking forward to this. Can you let us know what kind of AI protections you have in your contract? And if they say that we don't have any AI protections, then you can say, great, then here's an AI writer template that we would like to get added to our agreement.
That's
And it's
cool.
very simple. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Um,
have a further conversation with
yeah,
him.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
one of the things
new.
that we have seen a lot is producers or production companies or clients that come back to an actor and say, "Oh, we had this pickup for you, but we didn't want to bother you. So
Right.
guess what?
Yes.
Great news! We uploaded your voice into an AI generation tool, and then we were able to do the pickup without even bothering you. Isn't that
Hmm.
awesome?" And the actor is like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, what?" Like, uh, because you don't know what platform they uploaded you to. You don't know if it's something like 11 Labs, which has in their terms of service that it's not going to be used beyond the one time that it's uploaded, or if it's a platform that they uploaded your voice or image to, and now it's
Mhm.
publicly available for anyone to use. You never gave permission. And they might think that it's a great time-saving, cost-saving tool, but if you don't have that conversation with them in advance, they don't necessarily know that that's not something that you want. People are using
Yeah.
AI right now like, oh, isn't this a cool picture of me? Look, I'm
Right.
like standing like in front of the Louvre. Like it's AI generated. Haha, I'm not really in Paris. Like, yeah, great,
Yeah.
fine. But what images were used to train that model so that you can do that? And now that you uploaded your image to that platform, do they have your image forever? Um, and what are they going to do with it? So um, yeah, it's extremely problematic, and we all need to have the conversation. And it doesn't mean that you can never do an AI job. I have a couple of synthetic voices. I've done a few different AI jobs, but the AI jobs that I've done have been with very, very strong contractual language. I know exactly what it's
Mhm.
being used for. And the benefit of it is that now, I make money without having to do any extra work because I have a synthetic voice that is on a big phone system, or I have a synthetic voice that reads the weather, or something that a human would not even do. Um, so it's not impossible to work with. It's not something that you need to be completely against, but it's something that you need to be extremely protective of, and
Yeah.
definitely have the conversation with all of your clients.
And that's one of the things that I think, many people are the hesitancy right now is that just so much unknown about working with these clients and working with AI. So many people are just saying no AI altogether until we get some laws and legislation things figured out. And that's completely reasonable and definitely something that people should do if they don't feel comfortable with this. The next step is to get educated on what these platforms mean, how they're going to be used. And if there is something that is impossible for a human to do, Carin referenced, the weather. It's impossible for a human to read the weather report at every single place on Earth at any given time, but a licensed, approved, verified, controlled with security synthetic voice that does just that thing is not something that people should be afraid of or scared of if they know how to properly secure that voice and know that the client you're working with is going to follow those contracts. Another thing we use is the New York Times. There's lots of accessibility options. It's not possible for every article to ever go up online to have a human voice actor narrating every single article for accessibility. That's always an option if you have working with a company that is doing it properly and safely to have your synthetic voice. It's when it gets to the point where the possibility of that voice replacing you in your job and you not getting paid is where the concern comes into play.
Or if they're using your voice without your permission.
Without your permission,
There,
yes.
there are
Yeah.
three things that we say when it comes to synthetic voice use, fair synthetic voice use, which is consent, control, and compensation. Consent meaning you give consent for your voice to be used or your image to be used for this specific purpose. Control meaning there are parameters around how it can be used, and you get to decide to some extent how your digital clone is used, whether that's for this specific film only, or this specific phone system only, or whether it's on a platform like Narrative, where every single time they want to use your voice for a commercial, it goes to you, the person. You look at the commercial, you approve it, and then they get to use it for that purpose. So that's control. And compensation, meaning you are paid fairly. You are paid a fee that you feel happy with. And it's really hard to set rates for AI use because the rates are completely determined by um, the use of the digital clone. If it's just for one movie and just a few pickups, but they want to just have you on the back burner for any pickup or any, like, that's a different fee. Then you're going to now be the voice of Chase Bank, and we're going to be able to use you for whatever commercials we want for the period of 3 years on TV, on digital media, on radio, on whatever. That is a completely different number. So it completely depends on the use of your digital clone.
Yep. I want to jump into a couple questions that are in the chat right now because they're directly relevant to this and what we're doing. So the first one is this question from Susan about, do non-union VO actors have the same rights as union, and on-camera union have the same rights as union, non-union? The question is whether do non-union and union voice actors have the same rights. Now, the question is whether we're talking about rights or we're talking about contractual language and protections. Everybody, regardless of whether union or non-union, has the same rights over your voice in the state that you live in. If you are under a union contract, you are protected under that negotiated terms that are in that union contract, which could be better or worse than a non-union contract, depending on what the contract is. What you don't have as a non-union actor is a legal team to help enforce that collectively bargained agreement. You don't have a bargained minimum rate for a job, but you do have the same rights as somebody who living whether in this country, whether you are a union or non-union. Union and non-union, whether you're VO or on camera, actually are under the same contracts. They're just the same contract, whether you're on camera or voice actor. They just specify whether you're going to be an on-camera talent or an off-camera talent. But if you're on a commercial, you're going to be using the same contract, whether it's voiceover or on camera. And then Carolina asked about some pay-to-plays, which we had briefly mentioned earlier. We have one of the first things we did, and this would have been in 2023, was launch what we have called the Fair Voices Pledge, which was a pledge that Carin and Lindsay Rousseau came up with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which was a thing for us to go out and talk to all of these online casting platforms that were handling our audio files to get information on what they were doing with those audio files. It was specifically in response to Voices.ai being launched by David Ciccarelli and Stephanie Ciccarelli, and this concern that Voices.com had 20 plus years of audio files that they were using to train and create synthetic versions of people's voices. We reached out to all of these companies, Voices.com, Voice123, Bidalgo, Cast Voices, VO Planet, and got assurances from them in writing as well as language in their terms of service that says they do not in any capacity sell, give, train, create synthetic voices from the auditions and audio files and demos that are uploaded to their platforms. We have a new version of that Fair Voices Pledge, which we launched about 2 weeks ago, which now currently has 20 plus companies listed on there. All of them have pledged that they do not do this, but they also have terms of service or company policies publicly listed that state they do not do this. If it's terms of service, this is a legally binding contract when you use the platform. So if you upload something to one of these platforms and they do something with that, they are breaking this legal contract that you have with them. So you do have some protections in there. What it doesn't do, and this is something that happens with every audio file we send out, it doesn't have any ability to control, trace, track, or monitor what happens when that audio file leaves the platform. The same way that we don't know, and Terry and anybody casting here, when you send an audio file to a client, we don't know what happens to that audio file. Agents don't know what happens to the audio file. We as talent don't know what happens to an audio file. We even a producer that we've worked with for years, we send them an audio file. We don't know where they're going to send that audio file and if it's going to end up in a producer's or an editor's computer that is going to decide maybe in 6 months from now that they want to do a quick pickup and they're just going to take your audio file and just create a pickup. So that's part of all of these incremental steps that we're working on to try and get into place. We can, control things in various stages of this kind of pipeline of VO, but we don't have the ability to know what happens to our audio files once they have left our computer. A great example of this is Bev Standing and what happened with her with TikTok about 5 or 6 years ago. She did a job for a company, a language learning company in China, and they had their audio files. And a few years after the project, they either sold or gave those audio files to TikTok. And she had no idea that they had ever even been used by anybody else, and ended up suing TikTok, ended up winning, and had her voice removed from the platform.
Tim,
So Yes.
Would it make sense to go to the on-camera platforms too?
Yeah,
Because
that's what I was just going to
voice,
say.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, everyone's
Mhm.
speaking,
Yeah.
So
networks and
our
breaking.
first round of this was focused mostly on the voiceover casting
Mhm.
online casting platforms,
Yeah.
but Backstage did sign on. And we are working on Actors Access and Casting Networks. I don't think it'll be a hard sell for them.
Yeah.
But of course, anytime you reach out to a company and ask them to basically sign a pledge that's almost like a legal document, they take it to their legal team and they review it and they make sure that they are already complying with all of the things that we're asking them to pledge to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, Actors Access, Casting Networks, um, Backstage, they have thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of hours of video of people's auditions that they've
And
just been
Backstage
uploading.
actually signed. Backstage
Backstage did
signed
sign, yeah.
for their audio. I believe it'd be company wide. They have it in their terms of service, but actually that's a good question. We should check.
And
But that's it.
Casting
Yeah.
Networks is dealing with voiceover now too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. We will. This will be phase two. We'll add them to
The
phase two.
Just to
Yeah.
answer Christina's question in the
Yeah.
chat, the pledge is not legally binding because it's not signed and countersigned, and as NAVA, we are not um, collectively bargaining contracts. So that is something that SAG-AFTRA handles. They can collectively bargain agreements with different companies. We are not. But our hope is that when a company signs the pledge, that is a public declaration of their intention. They put it in their terms of service most of the time, which does make it legally binding for
Yep.
them. And then if they break the pledge, hopefully actors will come out and say this person is breaking this pledge, and then there will be a public backlash that will be enough to have a negative effect on their company. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what it is.
And if it's something that breaks their terms of service, then we'll have the ability to help with legal, potentially getting legal help with there to enforce those terms of service, which has happened in the past. It's not, it's happened in different ways with different companies over the years, as terms of service have been broken. I want to answer the watermarking question, and then I think we should get into we got about 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. And
we
Casting
can
Frontier as well,
and Casting Frontier,
Valentina.
yeah.
Yes.
There is no watermark that prevents AI usage of your voice. If there is noise or an audible watermark on there, they'll just remove the audible watermark. And there are certain technologies and things that are being worked on by USC, University of St. Louis, and a couple of other companies to add some kind of imperceptible protections that would watermark this. There's blockchain that we're looking into. There is parametric NFT technology that we're looking into, but there's nothing that currently exists. And it's something that we're working on. There is no online tool to find out if your voice is being used anywhere. That is something that we actually had tested for a couple of years. And it's not viable yet. The biggest thing is that voice clones, voice matches sound like the real voice, and currently the technology picks up the voice match as the real human. In regards to Netflix, they are looking for somebody to run their kind of clone AI synthetic voice company. I'm sure that every company is doing that, and they just didn't get caught advertising for it the way that Netflix did. It is a bigger, larger concern, is that we have to look at these major companies we've worked with over the last 10 years and see that they have this repository of voices that they could probably legally use. So that becomes one of the difficult areas of this, is how much of the work that we've done under previous contracts allows them to use our voices. Joy, we do actually have template contracts, and Carin just dropped in the link for you. So, and this also has access to our AI writer as well. Let's jump in. Are we good, Terry? And we could jump into some questions.
Jamie, yeah.
And Jamie?
Yeah,
work
for
for you?
sure.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Thank you so much for going ahead and addressing a couple of those.
Yeah, and those are things that we look at. We answer pretty frequently, and we are looking at this watermarking protection thing as something we've been actively working on for about 2 years. And you would think that, that technology to create voices would, be able to use technology to find those voices as well. And it's just does not work out that way currently. So, should we take, sorry, Jamie and Terry, do you want to do just raise some hands here? Have everybody raise some hands?
Jamie's gonna
Yeah.
do this.
Great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure. So, you went ahead and just answered Allie's question about Netflix. So,
Yep.
hope that answered that question for you. The next person I have on my list that asked a question was Jessica Mars. Jessica, if you want to turn
Yeah.
your camera on and come up here to ask your question. She had a
Hello,
question about
Jessica. Yeah.
a podcast
Oh.
using her voice without.
Sure. Mhm. Hello, Jessica. Is it in the chat, or you can just ask it as well? I can go back and look
Can you
for
hear
it.
me?
I
Yes.
can. Yes.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, I can't see myself, so I don't know if I'm on the camera or
You
not.
you are on.
You're
Yes.
here.
There you go. Nice hat. Yes.
So my question is that can someone use my voice? Well, because they have. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
For a podcast that is, I'm so upset about this that I can barely speak. For the last 3 years, it's been used on multiple streaming platforms as an outro for a big podcast that has millions of viewers.
Okay.
And I just found out that the audio that I created 3 years ago was used, but I didn't know that it was used. I was never told, like, yeah, great, we've got you on the show and thank you so much,
Yeah.
And then someone said, hey, I heard your podcast and I'd like you to do a podcast for me. I don't do podcasts, Anyway, he told me the name of it and I looked, and I mean, there's weekly podcasts and they're all over Apple.
Wow.
I mean, I don't even know what to do, and they won't speak to me or return my calls.
Okay.
So,
yeah, Carin,
Yeah,
go
I want to
ahead.
ask a few more specifics about this. So you recorded like just an outro for the show? A
Yeah,
general one?
yeah, it was an outro together with another person who
Okay.
was friends with these people.
Okay.
My ex-boyfriend.
And they never paid you for it, or they did
No, they
pay
never
you for
paid
the
me,
one?
and I never told that it was actually going to air. They just said, okay, great. And I never knew that it aired, or I thought maybe they were going to try it for 1 week, or I didn't know. And so then we never talked about it again, and I got busy with my own work, and that relationship ended. And then I noticed it's been aired over and over and over and over, and to the point where people are hearing it. So, there's a little plug at the end. So when I contacted the man that I was involved with that did it, that got it on the air, he said, oh, well, you agreed to do it in exchange for the plug. And I said, please show me that evidence.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Is it a clone of your voice, or is it just, are they just
No,
using the
it's
same?
me.
It's the same outro.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the same outro, and it's me, and they admitted it. But the person who runs the podcast will not respond to my emails, and they have taken my voice off some of there's a million of them, and I don't know how they can take it off all of them, but they've taken it off, and I'm not allowed to speak to the person who runs the podcast. He acts as though it was something that he never agreed to and never asked for.
Yeah. So I have three suggestions. One is, of course, in hindsight is 2020, but for everyone in this room today, be sure that every single job you do, you have an agreement in writing. And that can be as simple as just a back and forth email exchange that includes all of the terms and exactly the fee and exactly how something is supposed to be used. That can stand up in court. Ideally, you would have a contract. You didn't have a contract, so that part of it is done. The second thing I would suggest is to call the company, email every single person that you can find on LinkedIn and tell them you do not want your voice to be used for this purpose. If that doesn't work, I would hire a lawyer to send a C&D, a cease and desist. So you hire a lawyer, have them send it to them in the mail or via email and say, this is my voice. I do not give you permission to use it. Please cease and desist and remove all remove all recordings of me on this whole podcast. They can absolutely do it.
Yeah. And that's something we can help with, Jessica, if you want to reach out to us about this.
So and I so appreciate it. I want to take up any more time. The question was that it was like a demo to be approved, not a demo, but like an audition where we were like, okay, we were going to do it together. And this guy asked me, will you do it with me? as though it was the first time. I didn't even know he had been on the podcast for years and had done the same thing to other people, because I looked back 7 years and some other girl's voice is on there, late female voice.
Yeah.
And so, but I never agreed to do it. This was just, hey, he wants to hear it. He might consider you for his podcast. That to me is like an audition.
Yeah.
And I don't send legal documents with auditions. So that's
there's a couple of things here. So Jessica, reach out to us and we'll help you with this. But I think the next part of this is that without a transfer of rights that you've signed that gives them the rights to this audio file, they don't actually own the audio file. You do.
Yeah.
You're actually the copyright owner of this. And they are currently, based on everything you said, in copyright infringement of your audio file. So you could go after them for that.
Actually, if you still have that audio file, register it with the Copyright Office ASAP. Do it today.
Register with the copyright.
It's cheap. Send it, upload it. I think you pay $50, and then you will own the copyright to that sound file, and they will not be legally allowed to use it.
And now they're in copyright infringement, and that's a federal. Now you can submit a DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright. I don't know what it is.
I have the audio, not with the music that they put on.
Yeah,
it.
That's fine.
That's fine. Yeah, you have the original raw audio. Yeah. Yeah. Copyright. Upload it and copyright it, and then shoot us an email, and we'll talk to you help you with that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Awesome. So next up, we had a question from Galena White. Galena, if you wanna.
Galena. Yes, Lisa, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Thank you. I would just say DMCA, so I never know what it is. Yes, Galena, what's happening?
Oh, I emailed you.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yes, I saw the email. Okay, so Galena is talking about a job that was sent that is Cricket Wireless AI stuff. And what they're basically asking for is, for no fee, they want to use your audition to test out their AI system for certain characters associated with this brand. My answer to you is, please write back to the agent. Tell them that this is not acceptable. Please have that agent write to the casting people and say, this is not acceptable. This is dangerous. This is not a good thing for anyone who earns a living from their voice to do, because it is extremely hard to track and trace, and you do not want to give up your rights to something, especially a product category as big as telecom. Like, that is huge. And if they ended up using your voice for that, then you would never be able to work with AT&T or Verizon or US Cellular or any other telecom service. So definitely write back to your agent, have that conversation. Please ask them to write to the casting director who sent this audition to them and tell them that that is not going to be possible. Because that's just extremely dangerous. And if we don't have the conversations, people don't realize that this is not something they should be doing. They just see it like, oh, AI is a tool. AI is a tool, guys.
Yeah.
It's alarming that it was an agent.
You're a tool.
That sent it.
Looking at it, it's not that alarming, but yes, it is unfortunate that this is what we have to do on the talent side of things, is to catch these things when they go out, push back, give our response, let people know why it's a concern. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Which actually segues great into our next question from Venus.
Yeah. Yes.
Venus, if you want to come up, I had a question about, should our agents be protecting us against misuse of our voice?
Okay, so this Venus, you're muted. But I can answer that. So this is a yes and no, and depending on the agent, and the agents predominantly will have a fiduciary responsibility to give you every opportunity that they get. We would hope that they would look at that and see that fiduciarily having you work for free or on an AI project is not in your best interest, but they will give that to you. And I saw Terry kind of shake her head with a kind of a nod. So there's just kind of this thing that some agents can hide behind that says, well, I'm sending you, this is very low rates, but I have a fiduciary responsibility to put it in your inbox so that you have the opportunity to look at it. We've worked with agents, and we have many agents who are asking questions and pushing back on these jobs and saying, I need more info before I can send it out, or I cannot send this out. But this is where we all kind of come into play. This is where casting directors and agents and producers and even the creative directors who are writing these, and then talent on the end have to have these discussions throughout the entire pipeline.
So you still need to be very careful with whatever they
Absolutely.
For
say.
sure.
Yes. Yes. And I would say, like, one of the examples of this is that any SAG-AFTRA contract you get is not actually vetted or approved by anybody prior to you as a talent getting it. So the SAG-AFTRA contract is downloaded as a Word doc off the website. Anybody can add anything they wanted to and send it to you, and you may look at it and see, well, it's in the SAG-AFTRA contract, I'm going to sign it. But addendums can be added, wording can be changed. Agents don't always catch that. They don't always catch those things. So we as talent have to make sure that we are aware of reading all of those contracts. It's unfortunate if it's a commercial contract because it's 300 and some pages long, but we have to make sure we look at those things. So it's up to us to ask these questions, to potentially push back, to get clarity, and to express concerns over, I'm sorry, I cannot do this job because of this, or this job looks really interesting, but I need these questions answered before I can even make an educated decision about this.
I want to say another thing too, and that is just remember that your agent works for you, the actor. So you as an actor are pretty much a small business. The product that you are selling as part of your small business is your acting services. The same way someone sells their photography services, they're an artist, but they're also giving their services, right? So your agent is part of your team that is getting you work. They are there to help you negotiate contracts to get the best rate possible, and they get a fee for helping you do that. But you are responsible for your own contracts, for your own career, and for all of the things that happen, with your acting business. So be sure that you really take that and own it and stand in your power, and don't be afraid to have these conversations with your agents, because you're working together as a team, and you don't want to do something that's going to ultimately hurt you.
Yeah. And Lisa Lee just dropped a good point in there. Is a lot of times we're just getting copy and pasted contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is like,
so
I've used this one before. Let me just copy and paste this. I don't even read it, but it's a contract I got from somebody. So let me throw it in boilerplate. And, we want to make, AI protections boilerplate as well, so that we have those AI language in every contract. And we're starting to see that. So that comes from us, like being educated, being empowered to question the contract we're receiving, to questions the auditions we're receiving, to make our thoughts about this known. And I think it's a hard thing for us as actors, and I will just go on a slight tangent here, because we want to see, we get an offer for an opportunity, we want to take that, we say yes, and then we go, oh, I should have looked at the contract before I said yes, and now we're kind of stuck into this. But don't give away your voice right now for something that's going to cause long-term damage. And we have to remember that we are an equal part of that agreement and that contract. It's not the producers are the one paying, but we're the ones providing the talent. And without us, they don't have a product on their side of things. So we know, not to say that we have to set up and be like, I have all the power here, but to say that we have an equal share and we have a right to question and bring up our concerns about these contracts that we get.
Tim,
Thanks so
I know
much.
that you
Appreciate
have to jump off now.
Yep, I'm watching. I've got a
Okay.
client. I've got a client in the booth right over here, and I've got a Source Connect
Good.
session
All
waiting to
right,
pop
so
up
we'll
here.
understand.
So, yeah.
I just want to thank
So
you.
I may just disappear at any given
Yeah.
moment here. So
I just want to talk about contracts for a minute, because I go over terms of agreement with my clients, and talent on here, it takes us sometimes 3 or 4 days to knock it out.
Mm-hmm.
And we get it ready for you. But the contracts don't actually go to the agents until sometimes the night before, definitely the voiceover.
Yeah.
If you're on camera, my contracts maybe go out the day before. So there's that challenge. Like, when do you look this over? And Tim mentioned boilerplate. Like, I had a job recently, and we went over everything in great detail. We put the terms of agreement, of course, on our breakdown. Then the agent got the contract, and there was a couple of things that were different, and we brought it up to the agent, and they said, oh, we used a previous boilerplate and we forgot to change that. So yeah, it happens all the time.
Ideally, you get your contract well before the recording date.
But you
but
won't.
you can't
don't.
always, and sometimes
Nope.
you don't,
Most
sometimes they
of the
don't
time.
even give you a contract till after the session. But
Exactly.
hopefully you have at least an email chain of what is expected of you, and they can't use whatever you recorded until you sign the contract. So
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for us to remember, is especially when we record from home, is that you are until they've signed a transfer of rights, you are the copyright holder of that piece of audio.
Mm. Mm.
And if they haven't signed the transfer of rights, if you haven't said you have the right to use this piece of recorded audio on the air, they are not the copyright holder of that piece of work. You are. And that's something, where it's an issue we've been exploring for a while. And it's, there's so many levels of nuance in there. But on overall, until you've signed that transfer of rights, they legally, technically, theoretically, all of those things don't have the right to do anything with that piece of audio. All right.
you gotta go.
I gotta
I'll
go.
stay.
All right. See y'all.
Thank you,
Bye,
Tim.
Tim.
Bye,
Thank
Bye.
Tim.
Bye,
you.
everybody.
The other thing that I want to say to you all is that digital storage is cheap. And it would be a great idea for all of us to just have an external hard drive that's a few terabytes. Don't delete anything. Keep everything. Keep all of your old contracts, keep all of your auditions, upload them to your external hard drive, and keep them, because you never know when something is going to pop up and you go, oh my gosh, I've been on this podcast for 7 years. Oh, guess what? I have that sound file from 2018, and here it is. I can show that you're using it without permission. So keep everything, keep it all.
Awesome. Yeah, very helpful. Joy, I see your hand raised. I'll get to you in just a second. This kind of combines two questions. So,
Mhm.
Noel Palm and Elena Sakota, if you're here, you're welcome to put your cameras on for this part. But they had questions for you, Carin, about how much of advertising do you see AI taking over in the next few years in regards to brands using fully AI generated instead of hiring actors? And also how that ties in with Facebook, Instagram, things
That
like that.
is that is a really, really, really good question. And the answer is that we don't really know. However, the commercial negotiation team at SAG-AFTRA has an agreement that everyone seems to be happy with. As far as I know, as of today, we haven't seen what the new commercial contract will be with SAG-AFTRA. I assume it includes some kind of AI, because hyper-targeted advertising is something that companies are going to absolutely want to do in the future. You see a Citibank commercial on TV, and it could be a base spot, but at the end of the commercial it says, like, "Hey Jamie, are you thinking of getting a new credit card?" Like, and it puts your name in it, which automatically makes your brain go, "Whoop, maybe I am." you know? So it could be that hyper-targeted advertising will use generative AI, and regional advertising may. Certainly, social media advertising will use some kind of generative AI. But I do think that most companies will find through trial and error that people don't listen as much to synthetic voices as they do human voices. There is some kind of uncanny valley thing that when you're hearing a synthetic voice, you kind of feel in the back of your head that it might be a synthetic voice, and it makes you not trust the brand as much as if it were recorded by a person. And so I think that companies will find in the long run that it is cheaper and better and has a better ROI to just record with a human. We shall see, but that's my prediction. Did that answer your question, both of you? Great.
Perfect. Love that. Yeah, that's very important to know for sure. Because I know there was that like Coca-Cola commercial or something that came out not that long ago that was like pretty much all AI as well. And it's crazy how fast the technology's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
That wasn't really received well, and I think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Like the backlash on that was good to see from like the consumers. But you see these companies dumping sort of hundreds of millions a year into AI, and
Yeah.
which direction that goes. Does it go to, try making an attempt to replace talent altogether? That's the catastrophic right part. I don't
I
know.
don't think so. I don't think so because I think when you want someone to connect with you, with the story that you're telling, whether that's in, you know, anime or cartoons or video games or commercials or the news or anything else,
Yeah.
it's just, it does something different to have a real person. And the real question to me is how much is the next generation going to care? How much are they going to care if it's AI? Like my kids, we have Google smart speakers in our home. They talk to Google and ask Google questions all the time. And they know that she's a robot and they don't really care. Like that's just it's part of what they've grown up with and it may even become kind of nostalgic to them to interact with a robot voice. I don't really know. But for now, for this generation of people, I think that synthetic voices to our ears and even if we can't really tell, it just feels a little bit inauthentic. And so having a human tell that story is going to be better than having a synthetic version of a person telling a story.
Cool. Thanks for answering that for us, Karin.
Of
So,
course.
Joy, you have your hand raised. You have a question?
Hi. Yes, not a problem. I just want to know, since AI is growing exponentially, is whether or not NAVA also has a section to the laws and everything that's coming up on the books and is going on the books. Because even though it's nice now, thank you that you had the documents and everything in a section in the folder. But we also need to have knowledge of the laws that's coming up that we also need to know about as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, we one of the things that Nava is hoping to do is just to educate people because
Yes,
education, I believe, is our greatest weapon. If we know more than the companies that we're working with about exactly how we want our voices to be used and our images to be used for the products that we're creating, we can go into a negotiation armed with knowledge. We can say the right words. I hate the idea that actors are dumb, that actors don't know how to read contracts, that actors don't know about the law. I knew nothing about the law when we started Nava 3 years ago, and I have been able to learn brick by brick and build a foundation on which, you know, now I can speak about AI as eloquently as anyone who owns an AI company. It is absolutely possible for every single person in this room to arm themselves with knowledge, to learn everything you can, and I encourage you all to do so because the more you know, the better protected you can be.
and we're not dumb. The best way to win this war is to actually stay ahead of us.
Yeah,
Stay
exactly.
ahead.
Exactly. And it's not going away. So we have to
No.
figure out how to live with it. We have
Yes.
to figure out how to protect ourselves to live with it. And if you want to take part in it, you absolutely can. Just do it armed with knowledge.
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your question, Joy. So we have one that came in the chat from Linton Tulloch. If you want to come on, you're welcome to. You had a question about video game companies and whether they're signing the Fair Voices Act.
Yes. Have any video game companies signed the Fair Voices Pledge? So the answer is no, not at this time. However, there are lots of non-union video game production companies who have implemented the NAVA AI synthetic voice contract writer into their contracts for their games. Now, this is like a little bit of a touchy subject because we're in the middle of a SAG-AFTRA strike. So let me just say that the greatest protection you can have as an actor is to work under a union contract. If you are not working under a union contract and that contract is violated, it's still a contract. A contract is a contract is a contract, right? It's still a legally binding contract if it's non-union. However, if it's non-union, you have to pay for everything to do with that contract violation, all the legal fees, everything that goes along with it, yourself. And I don't know about you, but I don't have enough money to take on PlayStation or Sony. I don't. If you work under a union contract and that contract is violated, the union will defend that contract for you in a court of law. They have their multi-million-dollar legal team that will go to bat for you. So right now, that is the safest and best way to work on video games. And even if a video game company says, we have signed the NAVA AI voice synthetic contract writer, and we promise that we're not going to use your voice for AI. Maybe that's enough for some people, but I don't really want to take on a large video game company by myself. I don't have the money to be able to do that. So I would rather work under a union contract.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I think that's all the questions I've seen in the chat. Now, does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask while we've got Carin here being so generous with her time?
All right, then. It looks like things are. Oh,
Marcia.
there's Marcia.
Marcia.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
Marcia, you want to?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Right. Yeah, I have it's a weird question. I was on a TV show. This is not voiceover.
Okay.
I was on a TV show and I got paid for, I knew in the contract it said that I was paid for, a specific episode. That episode came on and I had never worked in this that episode came on. That episode came on. However, I realized I was also in the next episode, but that episode wasn't in the contract. And I'm not speaking. I am in the episode that my expressions are being seen and it's just me. The camera was definitely on me. I'm very recognizable. My family was like, "Oh, you're in." My brother actually told me. He said, "You're in the next episode too." Like, cool, sis. Very cool. I was like, not cool. So I did contact my agent about it, and she said, "Oh, let me get with the casting director." Ask her. Then the casting director talked to production, and then also I wasn't credited on IMDb for that second episode either. I guess if it was a featured extra, I guess I wouldn't be, but at least it would be uncredited on IMDb or whatever.
IMDb is a whole can of worms. They get everything so wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so
don't worry about IMDb.
But this
Yeah.
is Marcia.
They're like
Marcia.
living in another dimension
Yeah,
sometimes.
but
So
it
my
wasn't
question-
done by AI. This is a whole different question.
I'm sorry. Okay.
And
Correct.
you did the right thing to go to your agent. I can hear the steps you've taken. It's actually the right steps, and they'll straighten it out.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
By the way, it happens many times to
Yeah, I
people.
can only imagine.
Shows. I
can only
think that
imagine.
we are complete. This was absolutely wonderful, Carin.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So much. A copy of this will go out to everyone. I'll send you a copy too. And again, thank you so much. And if you have any closing words for everyone, I'd like to take the opportunity to close it out.
I want to say that if you have social media, you can follow NAVA at NAVA Voices on all of our social media platforms. You can sign up for our newsletter. We have lots of cool information there. And my final thought would be just remember that you have the power over your own career. You have the ability to inform yourself. If someone violates you in a job that you've done, you have the ability to go and fight that. NAVA has legal resources that can help you if you need help with that. If it's under a union contract, definitely contact SAG-AFTRA. They will do a great job defending you. But just remember that you have the power. We have the power. Fight the robots.
Exactly.
We'll work with them. I mean, but come on.
I think it's an age-old situation that actors are afraid to speak up or talk even to their agents. It just happened I saw chats all over the place because there's a lot of social media on a particular agent who was just indicted, who didn't pay their talent. And I was watching a lot of the chats, and the actors were sharing each other. I was afraid to go to the union. I was afraid. I was afraid I wasn't getting paid, and I was afraid. Whoops, something happened. Someone started sharing a screen. Jamie, can you? So I think that you being on here and giving such great information, like you started out, information to be informed is so powerful. So thank you for helping empower the talent here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Karin. And just for everybody in the chat, just to reiterate real quick, there will be a replay of this on Berland Casting's YouTube channel. That'll be up by early next week, so you guys can catch the full recap. And we've popped the links in the chat. I just did it a couple minutes ago as well for the NAVA Voices organization. You can check out the AI writer, everything that they're doing, AI info and advocacy, and other amazing resources that they have there if you have any follow-up questions or want to get in contact or get in their newsletter, like Karin said. So thank you guys all so much for joining. And thank you, Terry, obviously, for us hosting this. And Karin, thank you, and Tim, for being so generous with your time and knowledge. Like you said, knowledge is power. So thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.